On this episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive, it is a buyer's guide for the iconic E92 M3. I'm going to share with you what I got right and wrong from an option perspective so you can get the best spec one possible. And then we'll end with some common issues that you should know of before you buy one of these. Welcome everyone to another episode of Eat, Sleep, Drive. Now, of course, the E92 M3 is a very special car and it holds a unique place in the M3 lineage. You see, this is the only V8 M3 ever produced, and it's probably the last naturally aspirated M3 ever produced. Now, if you want to know what this car is like to drive, check out some of my previous videos. I actually have one where I compared it to my GT350. This video is going to be about options and specs, basically so you can get the best spec possible out of this car. And then I'll also end with some details on some common issues that you're going to run into with these cars and some things that you should be aware of. So without further ado, let's dive in. Now, the first option that is a must for me probably will surprise some people, but it's actually the carbon fiber roof. You see, in these years, it was an option, like a standard option, that you could get the carbon fiber roof, but as no cost, you could opt for a moonroof or a sunroof, whatever you want to call it. So a lot of people opted for the moonroof because it was free. Now, I get it. Obviously, a moonroof is more useful on a, especially daily driver street car, than a carbon roof, but I want you guys to go check out, if you haven't seen it before, the link in the description, where there's a video of showing them like producing this carbon roof. And it's so cool, it's so involved. It's kind of amazing that they were able to justify to the accountants to make that happen, because clearly it costs a lot of money to just put a carbon roof on this car. Now, to me, it looks super cool. You're obviously not gonna notice the 45-pound savings over the moonroof at the top of the car, like on the street. But it's cool, it's unique. And the other thing is, you have to keep in mind, there were a lot more cars optioned with the sunroof or moonroof than the carbon roof. So this is actually less common, or dare I say it, more rare. It's a unique feature to the car, and to me, it was a must when I was speccing these cars. Now, the next must, in my opinion, which is probably going to jive more with what everyone else is thinking, is the manual transmission. So this car was the first M3 to have a DCT transmission, and it's actually pretty good, don't get me wrong, but I just think that if you're buying an M3 of this generation, you're kind of looking for more of a raw, more involving experience. I mean, hell, it has a V8 engine that revs past 8,000 RPM, it's naturally aspirated. The manual gearbox suits the car better, in my opinion. It's not that this is the fastest car ever, like, I understand DCTs on Ferraris and McLarens and stuff like that, but on this car, like, just get the manual, because once again, it's more involving, but also one thing you should keep in mind, it's obviously less complex. The DCT is relatively reliable in these cars, but what you find a lot of times is they leak, and they can be very expensive to fix the leaks on those cars because there's a lot of seals and stuff going on. And obviously, if you have any mechanical issues with that thing, it's going to cost an arm and a leg to fix. You can't go wrong with a very simple manual transmission on this car. The next must, in my opinion, with these cars is making sure that the car was optioned with EDC dampers. So EDC stands for electronic damper control. And basically what happens is there are yaw sensors all over this car and G sensors that will adjust the shocks accordingly depending on what the car is doing. And in 2008, that was kind of a big deal. There were cars before this that did that, but this was kind of the first mainstream one, and certainly the first M3 to do that. And a lot of times technology in cars doesn't age super well, but technology as it benefits like the driving experience can. And I think it does this car a lot of favors. A lot of cars, when you get in them and you put it in sport mode, you don't really notice anything other than maybe like a sharper throttle. But when you put it in sport mode in this car, or you put the dampers in more of a stiffer setting, it's very, very noticeable. So I would say that, in my opinion, it is a must. You can get options of just fixed suspensions on this car, which are fine. But in my opinion, like, the car was developed with the EDC dampers in mind. So make sure you buy one with EDC dampers. Now the next thing I want to talk about is color, and color is something that maybe I didn't get exactly right. Now first, I think that this space gray looks wonderful on this car, but at the same time, it's not exactly unique or very flashy or, you know, super sexy. I mean, the car looks really good, especially when I have the black wheels on the car, which obviously are not on there now, but I would, if I could do it again, try and get something with a little more unique color. Interlagos blue, which is sort of a deep blue color, is one that I really had my eye on for a long time. They didn't make a whole ton in that color, and I think it looks fantastic on this car. I'm not a huge fan of red, but they did make these in red, and there were very few actually made in red. It was one of the smaller production numbers that were of this generation in red. So if you're looking for complete collectability or you're looking for a totally unique package, you might want to go with one of those colors. Once again, I think this color looks great. I think white looks really good on these cars, but they made a lot of white, they made a lot of gray. So look for something maybe a little more unique if you really want to stand out, like Interlagos blue or the red, which I can't remember what it's called, but I'll post it right here. So the last thing from a spec point of view is this right here. Only one set of doors. This is a coupe, of course. Now these cars came in a coupe and a sedan, which was different than the E46 of the prior generation. And now this is one where I could honestly go either way. The reason I like the coupe is because, number one, I think it looks better. I think it's sleeker. It's certainly lighter. You'll find varying sources as to how much lighter it is than the sedan. But also, like, think about just other cars that become more collectible in the end. Like, it's always the coupe versions. Like, certainly muscle cars, like of that era, like everyone wants the coupes. Like, hardly anyone wants the sedans. So just long term, I think coupes just hold their value better, I think, or maybe are more kind of iconic to the shape of the car. I think the E90, which is the sedan, looks great on this car. And the thing you need to keep in mind, and the only reason that I'm hesitant to say a coupe all the way, is the fact that they made less sedans, actually. They made significantly more coupes in the M3 version of the E90 E92 generation. And so that's one thing to keep in mind. If it's ultimate uniqueness or collectability that you're looking for, then the sedan is actually more rare or less common. So a sedan, especially in those colors that I mentioned, would really stand out from the rest of the M3s of this era. Now we get into what you want to look out for or things that you should know of before you buy this car. Now, first of all, I'm popping the hood to show you the engine, but I'm gonna have to hold this hood open because the hood struts don't work. I don't know if that's a common problem or not, but of course, that is to show that there are, of course, going to be little things that come up with any car, especially BMW of this era that's over 10 years old. Like, you're gonna have stuff like that go wrong. But let's talk about the big issues, like little, you know, lock actuators or window regulator, like whatever, that stuff's gonna go wrong. It's not terribly expensive to fix. You could probably do it yourself. Some things that you need to look out for, of course, is the one that probably everyone has heard about at this point, are the rod bearings. These cars, quick summary, have too tight of a clearance for the rod bearings from factory. They wear prematurely. We've seen cars from, you know, low mileage, 25,000 miles, that have had spun bearings, or you've had cars go over 100,000 miles that haven't. So it's all over the map, but it's a good idea to spend the $2,000. It's not an insignificant amount of money, but it's not an insane amount of money either, and have a quality shop do it. Like, I am a DIYer, and I guess I could do that job, but it really worries me because of how integral, obviously, rod bearings are to an engine. I would rather pay someone who has done it before, has had the experience to do it. And at $2,000, it's, once again, it's not the end of the world. It's like, what? It's like the cost of a clutch job or whatever. So rod bearings, have $2,000 set aside if it hasn't been done on the car that you're buying. The other big cost that you need to look out for on these cars is the throttle actuators. So this is a naturally aspirated V8 in ITBs, independent throttle bodies, and there are two servo motor things that control the opening and closing of these individual throttle bodies. And they have plastic gears in them that are just trash. Like, it's pretty poor design. but they notoriously go bad around 75,000 miles as well in these cars, and they need to be replaced almost always eventually. So the thing about it is, that is a job that you could probably do yourself. It's not too bad. It's just kind of a hard time getting this like intake manifold off of the car, just because of tight clearances and stuff. So it's more of a tedious job than a hard job. So it is something you can definitely do yourself, but they are $600 right around there a piece. So you're looking at $1,200 if you do it yourself, probably another $2,000 if you're paying someone to do it. So these are the two big Achilles heels of these cars. Maybe you can find one that this has already been done. I mean, these cars are getting to an age where a lot of people know about the rod bearings, are proactively doing them, and have run into the throttle actuators as well. So it's quite possible that you could find a car that's already had these done. Well guys, that's all I have for you. I hope you found this video informative. If you are interested or looking at an M3, I mean, I highly recommend these cars as they're very unique. As I mentioned, especially in the M3 lineup, if you've driven other M3s like the E46, this is a logical progression to me of that car. It's obviously bigger. The E46 is smaller, which I much prefer, but this V8 that revs past 8,000 RPMs is a very, very special engine, and to pay the $2,000 to have the rod bearings done is unfortunately a necessary evil, but it really is worth it. This thing sounds incredible, it feels incredible, and it's super, super fun to drive. So look out for some of those common issues, and in my opinion, you know, this is the premium spec that I would buy. What I basically gave, the information that I gave to you, basically this car, but in another color, I think would be the best spec in my opinion. It's just a great car. So if you're interested in one and you have some money set aside for repairs, I would say buy one, especially if you can do your own work for some of the smaller stuff. If you don't have any spare money and it's a stretch for you to buy this, you know, and you don't work on your car yourself, you should probably stay away, unfortunately. It's just that kind of car. But once again, iconic, and I truly love driving it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Did I miss anything? Do you agree with the spec that I laid out here? I appreciate you guys watching as always. If you want to follow me in between episodes, Eat Sleep Drive TV on Instagram. I'll see you in the next one, guys.